Welcome, everyone, to the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville. Of course, we are celebrating Star Trek Strange New Worlds here on the Union Federation podcast, both here on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. And if you're watching the YouTube, appreciate you. Thank you guys for joining us live. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments and we'll share them out. Appreciate that as well. And if you're watching, of course, YouTube as well, please check out the QR code there we are showcasing. It'll take us directly to our FPNet site with all of our wonderful podcasts on the network. We are celebrating Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 here on the Fandom Podcast Network and Union Federation. We got 10 episodes to cover. We're about halfway through. This is very, very exciting. And we can't go on any further until I introduce the rest of my crew. With me, as always, is co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kyle Wagner. Welcome to the show, buddy.
I am glad to be here. I've got my battle tribble with us. And I do know that for a fact that our counselor, Amy Nelson, is on special assignment at, I believe it's STLV, they call it, which otherwise means she's just drinking a lot of Romulan ale and Klingon blood wine.
This is very, very true. Yes. We'll get all that report. But with us, as always, is the Oracle and Science Officer, the one that always sets us straight and lets us know how smart we are not. Let's welcome Haley Stoner. What's up, Haley?
Hello. Definitely do not. Well, no, I have the heebie-jeebies this week a little bit. Also, what are little girls made of?
I see what you did there.
If we're talking about our clones, I know that was
Well, guys, we got an interesting show ahead of us, but we always like to tease what has happened for here on the Fandom Podcast Network, but more specifically here on Union Federation. Make sure you guys check out our past shows we've done. We did a wonderful limited podcast on all Star Trek Next Generation episode 2-parters, which was a lot of fun. We also recently covered Lower Decks Season 5, which turned out to be the final season. That was a lot of fun. We also gave our review on Section 31, and we recently wrapped up a 10-episode limited series on the Orville, where we highlighted each of the main cast members, including the last episode where we discussed all the wonderful guest stars and Star Trek alumni. And if you're joining us here live and you have not checked us out on our previous shows of Strange New World Season 3, make sure you check that out. We had a great discussion last week of the episode 4 of Season 3, A Space Adventure Hour. But we are discussing Season 3, Episode 5, Through the Lens of Time. This is Episode 22 of the Union Federation. And as Kyle mentioned, going on just recently this last weekend is Star Trek STLV, Star Trek Las Vegas, happened August 6th through the 10th. Make sure you guys come back because Amy's going to give us a full report. They had a wonderful list of guests there, including the 30th anniversary of Voyager, and all the main crew members showed up for that. Haley.
Yeah, and I'm bummed because I have gone in years past. I have made a commitment to be there next year. As you guys know, or maybe do not know, next year is the 60th. That's right. 60 of the original series.
The one that started it all. That's huge. That's great.
We would not be here if it wasn't for the original series. So
this is true. What I like about STLV, from what I've seen too, is that you get a good collection of not just Star Trek alumni. Like they had a little Picard reunion there as well, but actually they had some Orville and Star Wars people there too, which I thought was very nice. So, but guys, let's go ahead and get into the first away mission. Right, we are talking Season 3, Episode 5 of Strange New Worlds, Through the Lens of Time. And Wesley wants to remind you that we have a spoiler alert here. Kyle, do you want to hit the spoiler alert button?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's my turn to hit the button.
Yep, you hit the button. We got the Admiral's Log episode synopsis for this episode. And Haley, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Of course. Medical assistant Dana Gamble and Ortegas' brother, Beto, join an archaeological expedition led by Chapel and Corby, exploring an ancient temple-like building. When Gamble picks up a glowing orb in the ruins, it explodes in his face, blinding him. After he is transported back to the Enterprise, the temple locks, trapping the rest of the away team inside. Mbenga fails to make progress healing Gamble's eyes, and although Gamble appears conscious, scans indicate he is brain dead. The away team discovers that the temple is actually a prison for extra-dimensional parasitic evil beings called the Vesda. They eventually escape after Spock and Uhura figure out how to navigate the temple's bizarre metaphysical properties. Meanwhile, Batel, apparently due to her Gorn DNA, recognizes Gamble as possessed by a Vesda, and the two fight until Gamble is apprehended by security and placed in the brig. He kills his guard, escapes, and takes Scotty, Sam Kirk, and Chief Engineer Pelia hostage, demanding control of the ship. Pelia shoots and kills him, and as the Vesta spirit escapes his body, Scotty captures it in the transporter pattern buffer. Which actually technically isn't true. He actually captured it in a recreated little capsule and then uses the transporter pattern buffer to just, make it go poof somewhere.
That's why you're here, Haley.
Already sciencing this shit.
Sciencing the shit out of it for sure. There you go. Yep. All right, Haley, let's get your first reactions to this episode here. A little heavier than we were expected lately. What are your thoughts?
Though, I appreciate that. As much as I love the lighthearted episodes, I appreciate the episodes like this that we get because we have to have both for character growth. For our own growth in life, we have to go through, great times and unfortunately some really crappy ones too. And that helps our character. So I really liked this episode. I was not sure where it was going to go, and I really appreciated that. And so again, I don't pay attention to anything, so I never know what's coming. I don't even like knowing the title of the next episode. So I really, really appreciated this. I feel so much for Gamble, and I'm really intrigued. Obviously these Vesda, just as much as the Gorn, are incredibly ancient. As Pelia says, this thing is older than even something I've recognized. And we know that Pelia, much like, oh my gosh, it's been such a Monday. Whoopi Goldberg's character, Guinan. Guinan has lived for, centuries. The Q have been around for centuries. It makes me wonder, how long the Gorn have been around, and obviously whatever these Vesda are. And it also reminds me, they kind of reminded me of the characters in the one episode with, I'm so bad right now with names, TNG, Barkley. I almost said broccoli. Wow, Haley. Barkley, when he doesn't like going in, it's the first time he's used the transporter.
Oh, the transporter creature thingies. Is that
the little creature thing that latches on. That's kind of what I was thinking about, because that was also this interdimensional being that was there but wasn't there, right?
Right.
And so that kind of made me think of that episode. But I love this show for the episodicness and the different episodes that we get, even if there's somehow a story still attached that threads through all of them. It's like reading the book series that I read, where the character growth changes, and something might come up later from a previous book, but each book is its own thing, and you could really just pick up one and just watch it and not need to know anything else, and you'll just get it, and you'll be like, okay, cool, this is where I'm at. And I love it.
Good call. Kyle, your thoughts on Through the Lens of Time?
I'm first of all just going to say this: forget the Klingons, forget the Borg, forget anything else that's out there, the Dominion, whatever. Strange New Worlds has the scariest bad guys of any Star Trek show now. Between the Gorn and the Vesda, no thank you. I want no part of it. Between, I mean, let's be honest here. The Vesda, anything that can take you over in the way, and it feels like it's something from one of these supernatural possession shows, and talking about your mother and how you all these different things and pulling out memories from your head. Yeah, no, thank you. Strange New World, you win. You hands down have the scariest Star Trek bad guys. But I really like this episode. I like the fact it was a little bit heavier. I talked about that. I appreciate the silly episodes.
Kyle, sorry to interrupt. Get a little closer to your mic there. You're breaking up.
Yeah. I appreciate the silly episodes too, but I really like the fact that this was a more serious episode, bringing in a new potential threat. But that one that also apparently has ties to the Gorn, and that the Gorn are aware of, and how they also just scare the living hell out of even races that are near immortal, and that's pretty scary. But I also loved the interplay between characters in this episode. I loved the exchange between Chapel and Leon, and as they're getting ready to go on the mission, because it sure made it sound like, oh no, we're nothing like that. Well, I'm like, what are you? You and Spock friends with benefits there? What's going on here? But I think there was some really interesting interpersonal dynamics in this episode that I think really made this episode stand out even more so than just bringing in these cool new threat. And when you say even if one of them gets out, the entire universe could be threatened. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's interesting because you reminded me of when we were watching Voyager for the first time, and the Borg came back into the fold, and then we got Species 8472 kick some Borg butt basically, and you're kind of wondering, like, between the Gorn and the Vesta, it's like, who do we want to win that one? I don't know. So yeah,
can they just wipe each other out?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a smart move though to showcase this new threat in the way that they did it and how it affected one of the crew members too. And we'll get into that a little bit later because this obviously has a darker tone, this episode. And also it's one of the cool things that we love, and I'm glad you highlighted the episodic feel that this episode has, Haley. And what we like about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and with the connective tissue, with the relationships of the crew members behind these episodic things, it kind of still ties them all together. But what I like about this is that we get a little bit darker episode, and how things kind of take a turn that we really weren't expecting when it comes to one of the newer crew members, but also getting. I like that they addressed the relationship right away that's starting to happen with Leon and Spock, and how, it doesn't get weird, like, to where we didn't see the episode or the scene where, like, Chapel first finds out. It's already out there. It's kind of happening. And I like how that kind of just keeps that relationship moving on, because that is kind of tested in this episode that we see a little bit when they're trying to figure out how to get the hell out of a maze, and we'll get into more of that later. But as we always like to do here on Union Federation, specifically on the episodes, we've got some Star Trek trivia. Let's go ahead and get into that. All right, I'll hit the first one here. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, Episode 5, Through the Lens of Time. The star chart in the briefing room shows Tribble Prime, also called Lata Geminorum the Fourth.
Iota.
Say that
Geminorum.
again.
Iota.
Geminorum.
Yeah, it's Iota Geminorum 4.
Otherwise, Tribble home planet, right? Being just inside the recently expanded borders of the Klingon Empire, following the end of the Klingon Federation War in 2257, as indicated by the name, is the home world of the Tribble species first seen in Trouble Tribbles in 1967. The planet came to be called Tribble Prime. I find that funny still. On Starfleet stellar cartography charts, after Lieutenant Edward Larkin's mission to the planet in 2055, before it was claimed by the Klingon Empire, probably in some glorious battle, in his experiments that resulted in Tribble's massive breeding rate in the Trouble with Edward episode 2019.
Well, there's that, Klingon Tribble War.
I mean, do the Klingons wear a certain badge for that, for surviving it? I mean, what does it look like?
There's no greater honor than surviving the Tribble War.
Do you think that was one of the medallions or medals that Worf was wearing on that sash all those years, when he was on the bridge? You think one of those little medals was like, the Tribble War or something? I don't know.
Yeah, wait. Kevin, can you zoom me up for a minute? Because this is important. Because
okay, sure. Yeah.
When you started mentioning Tribbles. So if you can kind of see on my screen here, I'm going to move my camera just a little bit. When you started talking about Tribbles, this one started purring.
What Kyle is referring to, the audio listeners, there is his cat right there is wanting some love and attention, and Kyle is giving him some belly rubs, and he's stretching right now for us.
But we joke that he is the attack Tribble, and literally my hand was not on him, and he started purring when you started talking about Tribbles.
Haley, why don't you go ahead and get us the next bit of trivia here?
The reference in the episode El Cuicuy, or Coco, meaning skull, is a mythical Spanish boogeyman, a monster who spirits naughty children away and eats them. And subsequently, the Ortega's family is from Colombia.
Man, so what parents will tell the kids to be good?
Hey, remember, the actual fairy tales, those grim fairy tales were grim for a reason.
Yes, yeah.
Germans have Krampus. For a reason.
True. Yes.
So, you know.
All right, Kyle, hit us up with the next one. I believe it's Tartarus.
Tartarus, yes. The ancient Praetorian prison seems to be partially inspired by Tartarus from Greek and Roman mythology. The prison's depiction, namely its architecture, its ability to reconfigure itself and use interdimensional phase shifting, and it being used to imprison ancient and malevolent prime evil entities, is similar to a number of various mythological depictions of Tartarus being a prison that houses the most powerful and evil beings in existence, where they are held and tortured for all eternity. Some depictions of Tartarus describe the prison as being impossible to escape from because it was a complex labyrinth capable of changing its configuration to trap intruders and escapees.
So that's our real hell right there, guys.
Well, no, Kevin, I would just like to throw this out with the interdimensional phase shifting. Even though that they are all in the same room and they can't see each other, we call this the John Cena prison because you can't see him.
Well played, Kyle. All right, this was the next bit of trivia that I caught right away when I watched this. Being a big Indiana Jones fan, I love this. Through the Lens of Time episode features a thrilling adventure that pays homage to Indiana Jones, specifically the leap of faith scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. This episode involves the Enterprise crew encountering an ancient civilization and a malevolent entity that manipulates time and memory, And the homage specifically is that famous leap of faith where the character must step onto an invisible bridge. It's a direct reference to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You guys got this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't
Haley,
think about
did
it because
you
I was too terrified. I'm like, I would, because in this instance, it really might not have been there. So in Indiana Jones, it was there. You just couldn't see it.
Right.
In this episode, it really might not have been there. So I was too nervous about like they're gonna fall. Although I have thoughts on that, so I'll bring that up later.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and get into our next away mission. All right, here on Union Federation, episode 222, we're discussing the episode Through the Lens of Time, the 5th episode of season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And our first mission report here is part of our main discussion. We got a few to talk about here. And this is, of course, and I want to give a shout out to Screen Rant here. They had a really nice article talking about this. Star Trek Strange New Worlds introduces a new evil enemy. The Enterprise crew defeats the Vesda, or did they? Ensign Dana Gamble is blinded by an ancient artifact, but upon beaming back to the Enterprise, it becomes clear that Gamble has been possessed by a malevolent entity called the Vesda. The Vesda are an evil entity that is thousands of years old. Commander Palia, played by Carol Kane, herself a Lanthanite who has lived for a millennia, provided crucial background on the Vesda, citing her belief of how truly old the evil aliens are, and they give her the heebie-jeebies. The malevolent Vesda that took control of Ensign Dana Gamble lived up to Palia's fears. Unfortunately, the Vesda was captured. Ultimately, the Vesda was captured by Scotty after Palia shot it in the back with a phaser while the villain confronted Dr. Joseph Mbega's character. Scotty then beamed the Vesda nowhere, according to him, although it was presumably far away from the Starship Enterprise. The Vesda caused a great deal of damage, killing several Enterprise security officers as well as Ensign Gamble. While the Vesda that possessed Dana Gamble is presumably gone, there remain thousands of Vesda imprisoned on Vidia 9. If one was able to escape, it's possible that the others could eventually be freed from their ancient confinement. By introducing the Vesda, Star Trek Strange New Worlds finally seems to move past the Gorn in favor of a brand new big bad for season 3 and possibly beyond. And on a side note, guys, the Batel's Gorn DNA was activated by the Vesda. We had a nice little fight between them. The Vesda found an unexpected threat aboard the Starship Enterprise and was confronted by Captain Maria Batel, who was equally perplexed on how she reacted to the evil creature. Batel spoke in the Vesda's ancient alien language and lost control of herself, displaying surprising strength and speed to fight the villain until the Vesda fled. So, Haley, I want to start with you. We've touched on it already, but I want to dive deep into your thoughts on this new evil.
So, granted, I think it was really quite fascinating. We get that whoever these other aliens had found this prison, right? Because it's not a temple, let's be honest. They had grabbed one and they were taking it with them, right? But the power source was depleted. And so I'm kind of intrigued by the technology of this. Would the Vesda have gotten out if Gamble hadn't picked it up? We don't know. Probably not, because they'd been there already for so long. I'm not sure necessarily if this is a farewell to the Gorn and a hello to the Vesda, though, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because this, again, episodic, we've discovered that this is not something that we should be messing with. And so we have now left the people, they're going to figure out how to make sure that this thing stays shut. No one else can get into it. So if no one else can get into it, no more of these Vesda can be released, right? So my guess is that all the tablets would have to probably be taken back that they've found, that Corby's found, and then done more to release these things. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. It could be coming back. It might not. The Gorn might be coming back. They might not. I'm not exactly sure. I do think that Batel was speaking Gorn and Gamble was speaking Vesda. I don't think that they were necessarily speaking the same language, but they can understand each other. Much like our crew, we know they have universal translators so that it helps them be able to speak to anybody and understand everybody. I think they are so ancient that they know each other's languages. They've encountered each other, obviously, as we see Batel and Gamble fight. And that was a really well done fight scene. Obviously, they're both very strong species who potentially never, could one up and overtake the other. And so obviously this is something that is kind of a little like, oh boy, if the Gorn are brought back out of hibernation and these Vesda are brought back, it's very much a danger, Will Robinson danger, because obviously they're so both powerful. But I'm not sure that it will happen. So I think this was just a really neat way to introduce some tension and another possibility of things. But I'm here for it. So we'll see what happens, because you never know.
Kyle, your thoughts on the Vesda?
Okay, first of all, how is it not the first sentence in the Starfleet Academy handbook? No, you do not touch the glowy mystery thing. That should be sentence 1. So, putting that aside, I have some questions. There's a few things here. Obviously, the Vesda are this huge threat, and what I liked about the fact of what they did with the Vesda by introducing them and then having this moment with the Gorn is now all of a sudden the Gorn are a lot more aware of the universe than we even ever thought, because the Vesda are millennia old themselves, apparently. What's interesting here is I don't think the Gorn and the Vesda are off the table in any way, because I think you have still the Gorn situation with Batel. And come on, we're one transporter malfunction away from this Vesda getting free. That's in the pattern buffer. I mean, this
Scotty
is not...
beamed it into a rock.
Well,
what's that, Haley?
Scotty beamed it into a rock.
Well, no, he said it's still in the pattern buffer. So, I'm just saying this is not maybe the wisest decision, but I think it's very cool in the aspect of having these two races that in some ways are very different, but are both incredibly violent and incredibly one-center minded of taking control of the universe, but in two very different things. And I honestly think that we are going to see before we're through this entire run of Strange New Worlds, we will see a little bit of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Because I think it might lead to the Gorn having to deal. Maybe Patel's kind of the in between they're between the Gorn and the human race because they need to come together to fight the Vesda, at least in a temporary truce. I mean, we could be looking at that possibility. Yeah, the only other question I really have is, it sure seemed like there was a lack of staff in sickbay during this whole time. It just felt like
they didn't make enough of those god awful jumpsuits. That's why, Kyle.
Well, what I'm thinking, Kevin, is white the new red?
I'm sorry. I'm going to just say real quick, when I watch one of the random medical attendants turn around, I'm like, that thing is not flattering at all. Those jumpsuits are just horrible, horrible costumes. I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but anyway. Okay, so I was getting this vibe of all these other episodes of Star Trek that I was watching regarding the Vesda, of how we don't normally always see this mysterious entity that's taking over one of our crew members take this kind of corporeal form, and it has a body or a shape. We've seen it in a lot of versions of this. And I was also kind of reminded of this this horror movie franchise that I recently watched with my wife, is the Smile horror movie franchise, where whatever this being is, it transfers from person to person, and then they go insane and stuff like that. And it reminds me of a lot of the stuff that we've seen in TNG and other ones, where we don't necessarily see what these things look like. And yeah, you don't pick up the shining grenade, guys. Come on, you just don't do that. But it's interesting that they touched on this, because I'm wondering if they do have a form, if we're going to find that out later. I feel like I'm kind of with you a little bit on this, Haley, that I think we have not seen the last of the Gorn because of what's happening to Patel. And the Gorn are still out there, and I think that they should remain the big bad. But I don't know if we'll see the Vesda again. I would like to see it, but then a part of me is like, no, they're scary. I don't want to see them. So yeah.
So we did kind of see them though, because when Spock had those little thing, when he had that whatever visor on, and one of the orbs came up, it opened, right? It started to open, and the being kind of came at him, mouth open and that kind of stuff. So we do get a glimpse. And if you go back and you watch the episode right before Scotty captures it as it's coming out of Gamble's face, essentially, you kind of can see a bit of a shape to it, but you've got to be really close and pay attention. So I think they're like reptilian, as would make sense, just because from evolutionary perspective, amoebas, reptiles kind of were before human forms. And so they're kind of, I think, very similar in a sense to the Gorn, where they are a reptilian kind of species. And so you can kind of see it. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, Kyle?
I was just going to say, hey, so are you saying we're headed towards Star Trek Jurassic Park?
Yeah. All right, let's get into the next mission report here, guys. A bad gamble. See what I did there? Yeah. I get the pouty lips from Haley. That's funny. This episode's dark tone, Gamble's fate. This episode sees the death of Gamble, a recent addition to the crew, which raises questions about the threat level of other new characters. This episode has a darker, more intense tone than some of the other Strange New Worlds episodes, particularly due to the horror element and Gamble's death. Especially the way this episode starts off. He's so excited about being on the Enterprise, and then, then he gets to go on the mission, and it's just things take a turn, guys. I want to give you your thoughts on the death of this new likable character of Gamble. Let's start with you, Haley.
It was sad. But at the same time, I think for the story, it had to have happened, right? You can't have, as Dr. Mabenga shows, is he scanning him? He's like just completely confused as you're brain dead. But you're still sitting here talking to me. How is this possible? And, Gamble's freaking out when his consciousness is able to come forward. And how is this possible? Because medically he understands that cannot be. And so I think even if they had been able to save him and get the being out, I think that he would have been not him. Like, I think that there's a possibility if Pelia hadn't killed him, he would have been dead. Because this being, there's so many times in Trek we see stuff happen where, yes, a being enters the other person, one of our characters, the being leaves and our characters are fine. Well, not really, but, Star Trek. We don't worry about the trauma. So, but I think in this regard, that where he talks about Gamble's like, my short-term memory, he's like, I've forgotten stuff. His eyes completely unable to regenerate. I think that there was so much damage internally to him that even if they had been able to get that being out, he would have been gone anyway. And it is sad, but we have to remember that this is Star Trek and it's a reflection of life. And we unfortunately lose people, and sometimes we lose people really soon. And we don't get much time to know them and see them grow and things like that. And so I think that, it's, again, still that mirror for us. Sad to see him go, but also, if you watch TOS, you know what happens. The Chapel, even though she loves Corby, Chapel's on the ship. So just throwing it out there that stuff's going to happen. They're going to go their own separate ways. She's still going to be on the ship.
All right, hold on to the Chapel talk and Corby
All right.
stuff.
Well, I'm just leaving that there. So,
yeah. Okay, Kyle, your thoughts on this death of this new likable character, Ensign Gamble?
Well, considering since episode 2, we have had a conversation about is there too many people on Strange New Worlds? Now we know why we brought all the new people in, because we needed to make some human sacrifices in this season and reach a quota. I like the Gamble character. I thought they were going to do a little bit more with him, something more intriguing. But there was something about this with this episode I realized that also kind of annoyed me with the Gamble character. I was waiting for him to break out into Disney's song at any minute because he was just too happy. Was he going to do a little Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar? Was he going to throw that out or what? But it was interesting how they did this. And Gamble, unfortunately, really does have nobody to blame but himself. He's the one who reached out and grabbed the unknown artifact. But I thought how they did this with how they discovered it, with the fact that, okay, his eyes aren't regenerating. What's going on? And then M'Benga, through science, discovers what's really going on. And that's what I think makes it so freaking terrifying, is because he should be dead. There's no question, from the injuries he has, he should be dead. And this life form is keeping him alive. And then what is so scary about this life form is its ability to tap into other people's memories and brains and use them.
Yeah, that was pretty creepy. Good point.
And especially when you have him without the visor on, with no eyes, and he's talking to the one security guard, your mother, how could you abandon her? And just playing up on that, leave her alone, and playing up on that.
And it was M'Benga's daughter he's talking about. And I never told you that, So yeah.
I have got to say this. Kudos to the actor, because that was one hell of a performance.
Yeah. Good call, Kyle. And it's funny, is I was liking Gamble here. I was liking what we were seeing, and I'll be honest with you, I did not see his death coming at all. I was hoping we were going to get just a little bit more on a side character that we would eventually see a lot more of. So this caught me off guard, and I got to give it credit to the writing and of course the acting. That they introduced these characters. You're like, at the beginning of the season, and you're like, okay, I see them, showing some new people, which I think is good. And we would see him a lot, going forward, but I guess that's not the case. But, I mean, I'm just looking at the big picture here. I'm like, okay, we're going to hire this actor here to play this character. We're going to make him likable, but sorry, dude, you're going to die. I actually like that turn. I think it's good that we have that, and it reminds me a little bit under different circumstances too, though. But when we lost Tasha Yar in TNG, and they didn't try to bring her back. They had some interesting writing when it comes to the Romulan side of things, and then her sister coming in for an episode and stuff like that, which Haley is not a fan of apparently.
No, we don't talk about that episode, okay?
We don't talk about Bruno around here.
But I like the turn they did here. I thought it did a good job, and rest in peace, Ensign Gambles. There we go. All right, the next one we want to talk about, guys, is the mission itself and how they get out and how they work together. How Nurse Chapel and Enterprise landing party escape the alien prison. Effect before cause. Spock deduced that the landing party was all still in the same room, but in different planes of existence. The Vulcan realized the nature of the temple allowed for effect before cause, so that some things had already happened before the event is lived through. Spock also realized that since the Macroon's temple, quote, accepted Chapel, she had to lead her friends out of it. Nurse Chapel trusted Spock and stepped into what appeared to be a bottomless chasm in a moment that harkened back to Indiana Jones' The Last Crusade. Sure enough, the cause caught up to the effect, and Chapel, Spock, Corby, Lon, Uhura, and Beto were safely able to exit the temple. The Starfleet heroes also come to understand that the temple is a prison for the Vesda. Haley, Kyle, you want to go first on this one here?
Yeah, I'd like to go first because I have a feeling there's some Haley science stuff coming in. I want to make sure she has some elbow room for it.
I see where you're going with that. You got questions. She's going to answer.
Exactly. Well, I mean, let's be honest. This episode definitely got a little Doctor Who wibbly wobbly timey wimey here. We have interface shifts where they're in the same room, but they're not in the same room. They're seeing things that the other ones aren't seeing. And I thought they actually handled that very well. And the aspect I really liked for them to get out of it was they had to put the trust in each other, even though through their whatever personal things they're feeling, whether it's Spock and Chapel or even Corby and Chapel. Spock, because of his nature, was able to put all of his emotions aside to put trust in the knowledge of and the abilities of Chapel. And I think that's what's so great about that aspect of this, is because with having a character like Spock who can see the logic side of it, that's how you get out of these situations. Usually it's the people who turn emotional who go a little bit bonkers in these wibbly wobbly timey-wimey things. And it was the science, and it was the trust, and it was the straight up logic, but it was also the belief. And that's whether it's stepping onto that invisible bridge or just in the belief in Chapel and understanding the situation and the belief in each other to do what was needed. And I think that was one of the things that was really an interesting side plot to this episode. And I also think it's something that, in a way, brings the crew together even stronger to go through this, especially when you're talking about when you have people involved who have some emotional turmoil going on between them. And it's not just Spock and Chapel. You have Leanne feeling the way she is about getting involved with Spock. You have Leanne and Spock. You have what's going on in Corby's head in this episode, because Corby's a little bit tempting the dark side a couple times here, because I've got to find the artifact kicks in over everything else. But I think it was a great how they handled this was actually really well written and really well done.
Haley, what about you? Getting out of the maze.
Okay, so to that, I actually want to throw something out there and see what you guys think, and listeners, you can let me know what you think. I think it was actually just that one solitary space. I think everything else was not actually there. Even though it looks really huge and it looks like it goes up and down and back and all over, I think it really was just that one little space. But because of the technology that was put into keeping these beings that are, able to cross different dimensions, right? So we know this is a multi-dimensional space. It seems like it's big, but it's actually not, which is why, so like the floor getting to the door, it was always there, but it was just in a different multi-dimension, I guess, so to speak. Time,
Haley,
like Kyle said, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, Back to the Future.
Yeah, let me put this in Doctor Who terms. We're flipping it. So what you're saying is it's smaller on the inside.
Yes. So
I have a wibbly wobbly, timey wimey jar that I have to put money in every time Kyle brings that up. So let's be careful about that.
But so I liked this aspect of, we think it's a temple, we think it's potentially going to help this species, which, by the way, the makeup on that was fantastic. And so I really liked this idea of like, oh my gosh, we're going to need more people, right? Which brought great balance with Spock and Lon coming down to Dr. Corby and to Nurse Chapel's, really this excitement of finding this thing. And so I think, we always need some kind of balance. And so I really liked that it brought this balance to the landing party. But I do think that was actually just the one space. But because of all the science and technology in there to keep these Vesda in their prison so that, they don't escape, and whether they had real life bodies before and now it's just their temporal bodies or, encapsulated in this prison, I don't know. But I really liked that aspect of it. And I think it was great that, we had Beto, who was there, and he was filming and he's making these videos for Starfleet, which I think is actually really cool if you think about it, especially in this time where we're before TOS. And so Starfleet is great and exciting, but it's probably also the new thing where people are like, do we really want to? Like, it sounds really great, but are we sure we should be doing it? So like these promotional videos, which is so fascinating. And so this idea that his technology that is advanced from our perspective was able to see that, no, we're all still in the same space. We just can't see each other. And, that is really just amazing. And then using that to help them understand that, hey, we're all still here. Here's what we need to do. I loved that aspect of this teamwork and trusting logic and science, despite our enthusiasm for finding something new and exciting. Sometimes that new and exciting, we have to treat it gingerly, because if it's so brand new, we don't know what it is. Like you guys said, Corby, he was getting a little, I could have seen him like releasing all of them and then being like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. This isn't going to help us, be able to trans whatever and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Kyle, I was thinking, the second line in the Starfleet handbook next to "don't pick up the glowy orb" is "don't give up a blood sacrifice to enter something." I mean, nothing good ever happens when it comes to that.
No.
As soon as Chapel
just the words "blood sacrifice" should tell you there's a problem right out of the gate.
Exactly. Yes, it's just like, oh my god, a great way to start the tension off of going into this creepy place, and then when you see the native alien get creeped out and it immediately evaporated, like, oh crap. Don't want to go in there. But it's one of those things that, like, when the blood sacrifice, I'm like, maybe get the rest of Starfleet or the extra help down there as a backup.
I'm at least having a few photon torpedoes on standby. I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly. But on what you were saying earlier, Kyle, too, I love how the dynamic of the trust between the crew members continue to happen during this season, and what we've seen from season 1 through season 2, especially between Chapel and Spock. And, Spock was saying, you're going to have to trust me on this. And you can see the look in Chapel's eyes going, I do trust you. And we got to get out of here. So, well, the next mission report we have here, guys, is your any open discussion you'd like to bring to the table. But we've already kind of teased on it. So I'm going to bring one to the table here. And this, of course, is Roger Corby here. And so Roger Corby shows glimpses of his darker side. Corby's behavior is a little suspect here on Vidia 9. Dr. Roger Corby introduction in Star Trek Strange New World Season 3, Episode 2, Wedding Bell Blues, saw him in his romance with Nurse Chapel, victimized by the cosmic trickster Trelane in favor of Spock. Thus, Corby came off as empathetic and likable in his first appearance, since he and Chapel are genuinely in love. And there's some fun there was some fun thing going on in the hallways, where she's kind of giving him a little bit of shit and he's kind of letting her roll with it. I thought it was kind of funny. However, in this episode, it offers a glimpse of a different side of Corby, one that single-mindedly puts his own desire for scientific discovery above the safety of his friends, unlike Chapel and her fellow Starfleet officers. While Corby didn't have an outright menacing behavior moment, Star Trek Strange New Worlds cast a tiny but noticeable stain on Corby's patina, hinting at the danger Roger will pose to the Starship Enterprise years later in Star Trek, the original series. So, Haley, I want to start with you on this. We got a little bit of negative side to Corby here, and you know the TOS better than we do. And I just remember Corby's assistant and what she was wearing in that episode. Sorry, but that's what I mostly remember in that episode. But I just want to give you a chance to kind of hit that topic a little bit and what we're kind of getting a little teased to in this episode regarding Corby.
Yeah. So, I was like, oh boy, okay, I like getting to see the actual relationship because it's just hinted at in TOS, this relationship between Chapel and Corby. And she's very excited to see him. And then subsequently she realizes that he's not the person that she knew. And he's gone off the deep end. And this is kind of what happens with some of our scientists where they're not actually part of Starfleet, but they work for Starfleet. So, you think of a general contractor or adjunct professor, and they're always the ones that go a little wrong. And granted, they make some really amazing things, like, we wouldn't have Data, but also we wouldn't have had lore, and we could have not had lore. That would have been fine. But we get this notion that he very much is, I want to discover and I want to find things at all costs, and it doesn't matter. And that single-mindedness definitely comes into play. I hinted, and asked you guys, what are little girls made of? And, we see Dr. Corby cloning people, and he makes a clone of Captain Kirk in the original series. If you haven't watched the episode, you should go watch What Are Little Girls Made Of, because maybe you'll get an idea. But, this idea that, no matter what, your discovery and making scientific advances, despite the ethics, despite the cost, it doesn't matter. And that's a very dangerous path for anybody, now and in the future. That is very dangerous because you are willing to destroy things. And unfortunately, more destruction comes from that than any growth or any new discoveries, anything life, really. So obviously it does lead to their ending of their relationship, his desires to just find things and learn and create and not worry about, well, as he says in this episode, I'm not Starfleet, so I don't have to follow your rules. But there's codes of ethics, and we have those now and we have them in the future, and they're there for a reason.
I just want to give a shout out to the actor Killian O'Sullivan, who plays Dr. Roger Corby. He does a really good job for what we've seen so far. I've been impressed with him. Kyle, your thoughts on Mr. Corby here, seeing a little bit of his dark side?
So first of all, let me just lead off by this. Ladies, just because there's an accent doesn't mean he's the sexy good guy. And if he has an accent and he says he's a scientist of any kind, run. Don't walk, run.
Yes.
But he's such a bad boy and he's so handsome, Kyle.
He has an accent and he's a scientist. Run.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. You even see that a little bit at the end of this episode. Chapel really does put him in his place at the end of this episode when she's getting ready to take the walk of faith onto that bridge and tells him, you got to leave it behind. You cannot take it. And what the thing is, and I mean, this is a trope in science fiction, but it's a trope in real life too. And this is where, as wonderful as science is, this is the dark side of science, in the aspect of there are scientists out there who get so lost in the discovery, they forget the ethics and they forget the risks, and they just want to be the discovery. Excuse me for a second. And that applies not only in science fiction, but it does apply in real life. And we've seen it happen in real life. You push the envelope, you take shortcuts because you're so obsessed with the discovery. And that's what's happening here with Corby. And I think they handled it very well.
Do you think that if Haley became an evil scientist, do you think she would do stuff like that too?
No. If all you have to know is if Haley becomes an evil scientist, you just have to go watch Orphan Black.
There you go. Yeah, I like that we started seeing, as the article says here, again, to shout out to Screen Rat there, that we're getting a little tarnish on his patina, as they say. I like this. This is going to be interesting to see what happens with this relationship as we expect it to deteriorate. We'll see. But this will be interesting to see what happens. So, before we head on to the cast member MVP of the episode, anyone else have anything else they want to bring to the table?
I think we hit everything. All right. That was one of the things I gotta say. This is one of the things I liked about this episode. It kept the plots tight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it was they had to with what they were doing with this episode.
It was nice to just have the one storyline. Like sometimes it just gets so discombobulated with throwing multiples in. It was really nice to just see just one.
Yeah,
and everybody was focused on it, and yeah.
Well, that has been our mission report for this episode of Union Federation, discussing Season 3, Episode 5 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Let's get into the episode MVP. We like to highlight a cast member or a guest star. I'm going to start with you. Do you have anyone from the cast that you think?
Starting with me again?
Yeah.
Curse you! I hold weapons. Gosh.
Don't hurt me!
I'm going to give it up to Chris Myers, plays Ensign Gamble. I think, for as short as we've got to see him, in just the little bits that we've had, I really love that, he's been on the ship long enough to notice that and pick up on, oh, Dr. Mbenga is going to ask me to do this thing. And because he asked me to do this thing, he was also going to ask me to do this. And so he preemptively already did it. When he's asked to make sure all the bio beds are taken care of and everything before he leaves on the away mission. And I loved that aspect and that anticipation, because I think when it comes to places like engineering and sickbay, you need to anticipate those things. Those are two critical areas on the ship where you've got to anticipate something being needed to be done before it's actually needed to be done. Or something's going to go wrong, and so you're going to need certain things well before. And so I think that's a really great, if his character had been longer, a great character developmental growth for such a young ensign who, so excited to be in Starfleet, and he's on his first ship, and so I know you were thinking he's going to bust out and show tunes or whatever, but I think if I were him, I'd be just as excited. So even at my age, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going on a win mission, and I'd be like, woohoo, just like he is. So and it was terrifying, and the makeup was incredible when his eyes were gone, and that switch that he would do, it wasn't super noticeable when he wasn't himself, when he wasn't Ensign Gamble. It wasn't super noticeable, and I liked that, because sometimes it's so noticeable it distracts you, and you're like, you know that it's not the person before they actually say anything. And I appreciated that aspect, that he was able to do that. So yeah.
All right, Kyle, I have my pick for MVP, and I'm curious if it's the same. What is yours?
Haley stole my thunder because I had Chris Myers as my MVP.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think he was outstanding in this episode. So being able to go from this ensign who was pure joy and excitement over what his life was happening in his life, to this creature of just pure evil darkness. And how he transitioned that was just so beautifully well done. But since Haley selected Chris Myers, I do have a
yeah, I thought that was your pick.
That is
You're
my
gonna
pick.
pick two?
I'm going to just throw out a runner-up real quick.
Okay.
I am actually going to throw out Celia Rose Gooding as Uhura in this week's episode.
Okay, Uhura.
Because I loved the fact that how she calmed down Beto in that scene and taught the importance of communication. And I think she was kind of in her own way, outside of Spock, maybe the most level-headed of the group.
Yeah,
in this episode. And I think I love how she has portrayed Uhura as such a strong character.
That's a good call. That was a good moment between them. Yeah, I like that. All right, good pick. So I'm going to choose Carol Kane as Pelia. This is my MVP of the episode. And there's a specific reason why, Kyle, and you probably will not be surprised by this. I got a John Wick vibe moment from her in this movie. And I'm going to explain. For those of you that have not seen John Wick, the original John Wick movie, there's a moment where the evil, well, if you want to call him evil, mob boss wonders why the mechanic that works on his fronting cars and stolen cars strikes his son. And that's the person that struck his son is played by the character John Leguizamo. And John Leguizamo says, well, yeah, he stole John Wick's car and killed his dog. And then the mob boss goes, oh. Well, this is what Pelia does when she explains what's happening with the new evil here and gives him the heebie-jeebies. But then she has that moment at the table with Captain Pike explaining, no, I'm paraphrasing here, but she basically explains our area has evil that we have to worry about. There is evil in our universe. And the way that she says it with a conviction that she does gave me the heebie-jeebies just hearing her talk about this. And I thought that was a really good moment. I'm really glad Carol Kane is a reoccurring member or crew member of this show. And that gave me a John Wick moment, especially when you introduce a character or you give some insight to what you're going to see, yet you don't really know all the questions to this terrible evil. And then the way that she delivers it, it makes you freaky. Creepy. Kyle.
Kevin, could you give me another take of that for the cameras?
Exactly.
And also, I'm just going to say this. I know there was one, at least Carol Kane thing that you were disappointed with in this episode, knowing you. That she did not take out the bad guy with a toaster.
This is true. Nice reference to Scrooge there, Kyle. Appreciate that. Well, guys, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. Give our final thoughts on this. All right, this is the Union Federation podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. We are discussing Strange New World Season 3. This is episode 222 of Union Federation, discussing Through the Lens of Time in this 10-episode series season here on Strange New World Season 3. Give us your final thoughts, Haley.
Yeah, this was a great episode despite the tragedy in it. But again, it's that mirror to our current times. And with, discovery comes tragedy. And we're going to face adversaries that we don't always know about. So I think that was wonderful.
Gotcha. Kyle, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
I'm glad to see Strange New Worlds get a little bit more serious again, because I think it's at its best when it's serious. Yes, the fun episodes are fun, but there's something about this crew when they're facing adversity that I think is just magical, and how they work together. And this episode was another a great example of this. Though I do feel like the show title is a remake of a Foreigner song. I don't know about that. So
Through the Lens of Time?
Yeah, it's to the end of time, through the lens of time. We can work with it.
It's not my favorite episode of this season thus far, but it had its wonderful moments that I think will revisit or that will endure. And I'm really enjoying I'm really enjoying basically like characters like Corby and Trelane that we've gotten recently. And Strange New World has done a good job of showcasing how well these crew members are getting along and how the relationships between them are progressing through this episodic telling of this series. And yes, this was a darker episode, and going forward now, when they introduce a new character, you're going to be like, oh crap, they're going to die, But I thought it was done well. I love the introduction to the new evil, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening next. So here we go. All right, guys. Well, this is the Union Federation here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and of course the BQN. So make sure you guys check us out on Blue Sky at FanPod Network, and also on Facebook, Instagram, and X, or Twitter still as we call it. Haley, how can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I'm at Trekkie01D. And again, please feel free to ask me questions. I'll clarify stuff as much as I can.
I don't know if you guys know, but she's really smart. That's why we like her. Kyle, how can we find you?
You can find me, of course, all over the great groups on Facebook for the Fandom Podcast Network. You can also find me on Twitter, aka X, and also on Blue Sky at AKyleW. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom.
Awesome. My name is Kevin. You can find me on all of the socials at Spartan_Phoenix. You can find me on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. And make sure you also check out the Union Federation Facebook group, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville, and also check out the BQN listeners group as well. And also, too, if you want to give us some love, head on over to the TeePublic store. I'm wearing one of my Union Federation T-shirts here. You can search Fandom Podcast Network or Union Federation, and you can give us a little heads up there. Kyle.
We also don't have, and according to Kevin, any ugly white jumpsuits on our
God
page. But we can't promise what will happen if you buy the red Union Federation shirt. There's no guarantees. Sorry.
Actually, hang on. Before you say anything more, it is proven, and we did the counts, red shirts don't die more than anybody else. It's actually gold and then medical and then red.
It's true. Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
And and if there's ever, I noticed too, like there will be a lot of Star Trek costume groups that love to let's all dress like this and we'll all show up. And I'm gonna pass on the medical jumpsuits. I'm just saying.
But what I can say is, if you go on an away mission with any of the hosts of this podcast, be scared. It's not going to
be afraid.
Kyle, thank you so much as always. We'll see you next week. And Haley, thanks again for just sciencing the F out of this. I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
It's always fun.
All right, guys. Well, as we always say, as we here on the Union Federation, when we sign out, we appreciate, first of all, if you're listening, and also if you're watching, please leave us a comment. We appreciate that. But until next time, guys, as we always like to say, live long and prosper. And without a doubt, we are the weirdest ship in the fleet. We'll see you next week, guys.